Noel. I'm your guest. No, I'm not your guest. I'm the host. Good Lord. There you go. That started well, didn't it? I've got two great guests on this evening, Suzanne and Rose from The Advantages of Age. And we're going to learn all about, which I need to learn about, because I can be a bit of a downer on age at times. Before we jump into the show, if you're listening to this on a Wednesday, it's the Wednesday the 9th of February now. And it's 9 o'clock in the evening UK time. And if you're listening it live, it would be lovely to get you joining in. So you can drop me a message on my phone. WhatsApp, it is +44 7506 319 745. That's +44 756. Or whatever I just said then. Sort of, I've just now lost and forgotten my phone number, but there you go. I'll remember it later. Anyway, enough of that. I'm having one of those sort of senior evenings by the looks of it. So we'll see if I can sort of get back on track at some point. To my guests, Rose and Suzanne, hello. Welcome to you both. Welcome to Zoomland and the show. It's lovely to see you. Who wants to say hello first?
Hello. Hello. Noel, I have to say you've already started with a cliche, a senior moment. Oh dear.
Oh dear, I've already blown it. That's it.
You've already transgressed.
I've already got it wrong from the start, but there you go. I'm sure I'll continue to get it wrong all the way through the show. But
also we don't have a the before our name. We're just Advantages of Age. We're not the Advantages of Age. We're just Advantages of Age.
So tell me about Advantages of Age. How did that come about? And what is it about? What do you do?
We do many things. I guess I'll start. So because I kind of started, well, actually, it was Amanda. It was Amanda in the hot tub that started everything, really.
Oh, the famous hot tub. Yes, I've heard about this.
So I have a hot tub in my back garden, and once a month, I invite ladies to come and share it with me. And Rose and her crew came one night and we sat around in the hot tub talking as women do around, stuff, women's stuff. And one of the conversations was around the fact that the way that the media tends to depict older women wasn't the way that we saw ourselves. We saw ourselves as creative and feeling quite fulfilled and out there and, good, really, just good. And a woman in the tub Amanda said, we should do something called Advantages of Age. And me being a person who likes to start businesses and likes things to come up with things, they all went away. Rose remembers the date better than I do. I think it's around Christmas or something, wasn't it?
It was Christmas, yeah. I went on holiday, and by the time I'd been on holiday to Cuba, I think, came back, and Suzanne had already set up the website and was ready to go and was kind of expecting me to commission, 5 pieces a week for the website.
You said you would.
I said I would, and I did it.
Don't blame me, man. I'm not taking that one. That was not good. So anyway, so Rose and I started working together on Rose. We both have a background in writing and we have a lot of friends who are writers, creative people, and Rose started reaching out. We both started writing for the site and bringing in our friends and things to write positive aging stories really reflecting people's personal experience. You mentioned not being salesy. Well, one of the things we can't stand is when anyone pitches a story to us where they're clearly trying to sell something, because we're just like, no, that's not what we do. We do first person personal stories. The more it's about you and your own personal journey, the more interested we are in what you have to say. So, and we found that there were a lot of people,
What was it you were seeing in terms of the representations that were you thought were wrong or upsetting or annoyed you or motivated you? Rose, do you want to jump in? What were these sort of...
Well, it was just, I mean, I wrote some very declaring pieces. So one of the things that I personally have a thing about is, and I actually suffered from this before, was, you know, people not being able to declare their age because they're pretending they're younger. So that is definitely one of the things that we do all the time is out people for how old they are. I mean, with their permission, and out ourselves. I mean, for years and years, I pretended that I was younger than I was, and I'm now nearly 69. And now I always say, from my 60th birthday, I just had this kind of determination that I was going to embrace my age from that time. And since that time that I've been declaring all my 60s, I've been just so much more relaxed in life, because once you don't pretend about that kind of shit, then you just, you know, you can just be yourself. And really that's what it's all about. Advantages of Age is all about that, just relaxing about who we are. And then as we don't have to pretend, you know, I mean, still people will talk about how on dating sites, you know, women are pretending, and men as well, at least chopping off 10 years off their age, you know, and we're like, no, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Because once you do that, you can kind of expand so much more into yourself, which is kind of what we're about. You know, I published my first poetry pamphlet when I was 64. I just, you know, it's kind of like all of us. Suzanne started singing again a couple of years ago. Now he's doing gigs, and we want all of our tribe, Advantages of Age, to be doing that, and they are. I mean, I just asked people the other day, just a simple question: what were you doing? What are you doing this Friday night? And people were doing the most extraordinary array of things, from actually filming a celebration of life kind of mock-up in their back garden, to dancing, to all sorts of different things. It was an absolutely brilliant reflection of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, just kind of getting on with their life in a fulsome manner.
So one of the things you saw was this sort of valoration of youth rather than age, and people hiding their age, and I guess particularly women, not so much men, but particularly women. That's what you were against.
You know, we're more obvious about it, but I have a partner who is now 78, and when I met him, he was 70, and he was very much hiding his age. It's really through me that he's become more out there about his age.
Okay. So the dialogue is happening more between women, but you think it's also equally for men as well, but maybe men aren't talking about it so much. Suzanne, what were the things that were sort of getting your goat, as it were, about what you were seeing, and sort of the things that were motivating you to want to take action?
Well, similar to Rose, I was at that particular point when we started Advantages of Age, I had a tech business, and I was encountering a lot of ageism around that. So I was, you know, one of the few women of my age, or women, working in tech. I got very involved in the scene in Shoreditch, and I discovered that really there weren't many people that were visible, or that were making themselves visible. So for me, a lot of what Advantages of Age has moved into has been around work, because clearly, you know, and we hear it in the Facebook group, which is the kind of repository of where we see so much activity. It's we've got an incredibly active and engaged Facebook group that's nearly 4,000 people now, and they are now talking about hosting activities amongst themselves. But what I noticed in that group was that there were, you know, clearly topics that kept coming up, one of which was dating and the frustration around dating. And there was a period of time we were going to start a dating service called Not Dead Yet Dating. And we started exploring that. And then I was really interested in wondering what was going to happen with all these people that I saw that were losing their jobs, or didn't have enough work, and clearly had talents. And so I moved my interest more into helping people towards employment, which was really around self-employment. And so part of the organization runs a startup school for seniors. And then Rose's part of the organization is more lifestyle activity orientated. And she's recently won an Arts Council grant to deliver a dance performance in a cemetery. So it's very, we just want to enable people to do what they want to do, really. As Rose said, it's really about letting people be who they are and giving them the support that they need, to be able to feel comfortable around the choices that they make.
I guess one of the themes, and before the show, people talk before the show. They have lives, they exist before the show, and you're both discussing, what are we going to talk about tonight? And I think, Rose, you said something along the lines, he likes to get into the personal stuff, does Noel? And I think it's sort of a bit of a problem of mine, given sort of my background as therapist. But I am actually genuinely interested in sort of what makes somebody who wants to change something, what makes them tick? Where does that come from? Because you're not the only people who, I guess, have felt, I don't really like the way our society frames the experience of older people. But that's not necessarily people taking action around that. And you two are. And I'm sort of intrigued, really, by those types of dynamics and sort of where that comes from. Is it something that's always been there for you as individuals? And was it just because you were highly motivated at that moment because something had really annoyed you and you got caught up in the moment? What is the story there?
I probably just bamboozled Rose into dealing.
No, I don't think that's true. I think that both of us are quite susceptible to the moment, and I think we were having a really good time in this gatheringness of Suzanne's hot tub. And I think for me, like, I'd had lots of kind of much heavier women's groups where we were being much more emotional, and suddenly now I was in Suzanne's hot tub and we were much lighter and we were laughing a lot. And it just seemed like Suzanne was kind of like somebody that, it's funny because somebody put us together, Lynn Franks actually said we would get on really well together. And there was something about that, the combination of kind of dynamism and that we would enjoy ourselves, that attracted me. So when this idea happened, I mean, we'd already talked about doing an erotic fiction night. When we first met, we are both people that set things up. I mean, Suzanne does it as a businesswoman, entrepreneur. I just do it in my life anyway, either poetry gatherings or something. So we're both like that anyway. And we just found this, and we were both kind of like dynamized by it, the whole idea. And we just went on that. And it's amazing that we're still together. That's what's amazing, really, is that because it would be easy. I mean, this is like 5 or 6 years down the line, and Suzanne is very different to me. So she's taken her bit off in a different direction, the Startup for Seniors, and I've really kept on with the Facebook group and with what I enjoy, which is commissioning people to write pieces, their personal stories. I love encouraging people to do that and encouraging people to write. I mean, there's quite a lot of people who've never written really before and who are writing for us. And I love encouraging them. And they could be death activists. We have people in the group who are death activists, I mean, they're creating
no idea kind of, is, so you're going to have to tell me what that is.
I mean, it's kind of creating community around death. I mean, and this is something that I feel passionately about, and both the things that I've created with Suzanne and apart from Suzanne within the group have been to do with death. I mean, first of all, we did a film called Death Dinner, which was, we gathered a group of people from, as I say, death world, but I mean death doulas, a pathologist, a death ritual academic, somebody who ran a natural burial ground, and we put them all around a table in Kensal Green cemeteries dissenters' chapel. And then we filmed it. I mean, we had a massive feast as well, and I invited people to come dressed as they would like to be buried or burnt. And people did come somebody came in their pajamas, somebody else came in some kind of elaborate Victorian outfit. And we did photographs of them. We had a whole performance around it. It was this, and it was being filmed, but we had a performance as well going on around it. Had cello playing. We had something going on in the downstairs in the catacombs. Oh my God, we had a performance with the Queen of the Night. So when I say death activists, I mean people who want to create a safe place, really, to be active and embracing of death. Because we are moving in that direction. I mean, we've just had one of our very lively, animated writing members die, actually, who was 84 or 85. Yeah. And there was a point where I realized, through being in connection with her daughter, that she was going to die, and that I couldn't, on the Facebook group, really authentically say, let's send healing vibes to Hanya, meaning that she was going to recover. So I felt, that the only way to deal with that was to say, actually, Hanya is going to die. And I felt a bit, I did feel a bit like, oh God, is this going to be all right? But I thought, gosh, if we are embracing death, we have to do this. So what I said was, let's send vibes for her healing, for a healing transition, for a peaceful transition. So, people joined in on that.
There's a whole branch of psychotherapy which is based upon dealing with existential issues, because we avoid them as a culture. And there's some interesting stuff around how in our culture, the UK culture, the Victorians removed death from us and sort of turned into a series of things that you have to do legally as part of public health issues. And also I think there's an interesting connection with, in anthropological terms, the beginnings of human culture is measured by death rituals. So the digging of graves and the decorating of graves often indicates the beginning of human culture, if you go way back, about attachment to people and acknowledging people and the impact they have upon us. So it's very interesting. You were nodding a lot of that, Suzanne. How would you characterize yourself? I mean, for Rose has just said that for her, it was this sense of energy. Suddenly it was like, oh, well, I'm paraphrasing you, Rose, so please correct me if I paraphrase you wrongly, but something like, oh, this is fun and exciting, and I want my life to be fun and exciting at this point. So it's got a momentum. I'm doing what I believe I should be communicating to people. I'm living the way I think it should be. And so it's carried me forward. That's sort of how I understood what you were saying, Rose. For you, Suzanne, was that similar, or are you just a bloody minded, or what is it about you that?
No, I suppose, I tend to want, when I do something like, oh, I'm just going to set up a website, I always enjoy working with a partner. And that's not always easy, because sometimes you find you work with someone and it goes really well, and then it doesn't go so well. And, finding people that you can work with and really enjoy working with is quite challenging. And I think that one of the amazing things about Advantages of Age is that, firstly, there's Mark is the other director who runs Startup School with me. And as a group of people, we are all very, very committed to what we do individually within the organization. Like, we all love what we do, and we all individually are people that use our own initiative. So I never feel within the organization like there's such a humongous amount of trust that exists between all of us that I just really take for granted now, because it's been working really well, and everybody and everyone that works with us and together, we all just really love what we do, It
makes me think of, I don't know if you know those Buddhist terms, dharma and karma, sort of purpose and meaning, and then acting on that purpose and meaning. So find your purpose and meaning in life, and then do it on purpose is the sort of message. And it seems like both of you seem to be saying, oh, well, that's what's happened at the moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Meaningful activity.
And I mean, Hanya was a really great example for me because I was a really good friend of Hanya, and I didn't get to say goodbye to her, which kind of makes me kind of sad. But I also knew that we'd had numerous discussions where she felt ready to go. Yeah. And it was clear from the conversations that Rose and I and others in the group that knew her had with her daughter that she was really comfortable moving on, you know? And so when she did die, I felt sad that I wasn't able to, that I'm not going to see her again, you know, but equally, I knew that she herself was really okay about it, you know, yes. And I think that's the thing about talking about death, accepting death, wanting to bring it into conversation. Like a lot of what we do with Advantages of Age is try and deconstruct and combat many of the taboos in society. And we have had kind of activities around that. And, you know, even in startup school, the approach that Mark and I have towards the people that we work with, who, let's face it, are just like us. They're just the same as us. They're just, you know, we have an incredibly diverse group of people, is that we're one of you, you know, this is a startup for us. We don't know what we're doing. You know, we're going into this in the same way that you are. And we try things and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't work. And, you know, that's the joy of being taught by people with lived experience. And I think that's the joy of Advantages of Age, is that we're part of our own community. It's our tribe. It's not, you know, we're not trying to take the higher ground ever. It's just, we just want what's best for everybody, really. On a
personal level, I really identify with the sort of entrepreneur stuff. And I remember sort of, I was made redundant from a job, and I spent my whole life being in jobs, you know. And I was 44 or something, and I was made redundant, and I just couldn't face the idea of being in a job. The messages I was getting was that I was no longer hot stuff in jobs, and you know, I was going to be somewhere in an organization that didn't really give a shit about me, and that was it. And so I didn't, and I set this up. I set my company up that is hosting this now, and I discovered I'm talented at running a business, and I had no idea. Absolutely no idea that I'm good at this stuff. But I've always been an entrepreneur within organizations. I was always the person who had the energy to set up projects and get people involved and engaged and all that. And it was all called all complicated words, but it was being an entrepreneur. And that freedom really helped me as a human being.
We tend to avoid those kind of big words, to be honest, like entrepreneur, because it's kind of meaningless for most of the people that we work with who just literally want to do something that they enjoy. Like, you know, that's what they want at this stage in their life. They have no most of them, I'm not saying all of them, most of them have haven't got that big grand envision. And I suppose that's the other thing about Rose and I, is that we've both been self-employed forever. So we're used to working very much autonomously. We're used to trusting each other. Well, I'm, you know, like, I think that's part of what comes from working for yourself, is that if you say, oh, you know, why don't we do this? We just make it happen. Yeah. We don't, you know, sometimes we both complain that like a grant application is much more challenging than we were prepared for.
I am totally impressed and slightly in awe of the fact that you've got Arts Council funding, because I've seen those application forms and they are
my God, they are
horrific. I mean,
they are really horrific. And I a few years ago would never have had the confidence to actually fill in one of those, but it's because we earlier on in 2017 got this Arts Council funding, and actually we got somebody to help us. I might have done most of the content of the arts bit, but they helped with the budget and everything. And when I saw I saw the process of it, and I applied for something else that was smaller, and then that did give me the confidence to do it. So I mean, I feel like we're always living our own philosophy in a way. We're extending ourselves. I'm like 68 and filling in bloody Arts Council forms, which really, honestly, I nearly lost the will to live whilst I was doing that. I was going insane. But, you know, in the end, it was worth it.
Yeah. And I spend my life filling in those forms. Although I have to say that, you know, when you're talking about grants and funds and tenders and bids, I do like nearly one a week now, right? So I spent a huge amount of my time doing it. But the Arts Council is much, much more onerous than most of the forms I fill in.
Like the Arts Council are insane. I mean, don't get me on that soapbox.
Like 10 times, honestly, and for smaller amounts of money. So
I mean, the amount of work you have to do for them. My background is the arts, and so filling in those applications, I stopped doing it because it was a waste.
It would be really great if they made it. I mean, because they're not talking about that much money. I mean, really, they should simplify the process. And I mean, when you imagine how many people can't get the grants because they can't bloody, you know, take on that. It's really a huge thing to take on.
Yeah, I mean, it is an exclusive process, and I'm sort of on a charity board, and we have people that we pay to fill in application forms because it's a career option now. Being a fundraiser is a career option, and people learn how to sort of fill these forms in. So both of you, though, had, from what I can work out, very sort of successful careers behind you anyway. And Suzanne, you've touched upon the idea that you were both sort of self-employed, self-starters.
Self-employed,
that sort of thing. What was your background, Rose? What was this sort of?
Well, so I you know, I've always been a meanderer, and I'm still a meanderer.
That's
I just
great
carry on meandering.
That's a really nice way of saying it.
I don't. I mean, and that's my wish, is to meander. I mean, I'm meandering through advantages of age now. I mean, I do it with conviction and commitment, but I do meander. And so I was a freelance journalist, basically, and I started off doing kind of rock and roll-y interviews. My first interview with Ian Jury. And as soon as I did that...
Oh, get out of here.
I was like,
Look, we'll just stop the interview. Jury now, if that's all right. What a hero of mine growing up he was. That's incredible. Who did you work for then? You were on Rolling Stone?
Well, so I started off working for a left-wing cooperative. I mean, not getting paid, but that's when I interviewed him, you know, so I got some experience from a paper called the East End News. And there were quite a few people. And then I just walked into a music paper office called Sounds. They were like known as the heavy metal. This is the early 80s.
Yeah.
And they were known as a heavy metal paper, but you know, they were much more eclectic. And they let me really do anything. If I said I want to do, and other people too, but you know, if I said I want to do a feature on heroin, which I did, they said, oh, okay, go off and do it. And that's what I carried on the same way. You know, but it was the 80s, so there was money in the music biz. So, you know, one minute I was living in a squat in a vicarage in Shepherd's Bush, which was brilliant. And then the next minute I was being flown to New York to interview Joan Baez. That kind of thing really appeals to me.
And what about yourself, Suzanne? You were sort of in a career as a businesswoman, setting up projects. What sort of?
No, I started my career in video and TV production, and I produced a series for Channel 4 about astrology. And then I left that was back when there was just terrestrial TV. And then when digital came in and the whole industry was really in flux, I couldn't get any work. I was a producer and a production manager, and I eventually moved into PR because my then husband was working for Lynn Franks, who's our connector. And so he worked in PR and eventually went on his own, and I ended up joining him, and we built a PR agency to quite a decent size and became a kind of top 150 agency working with Warner Brothers and Sony, mainly in entertainment. Like Rose, we had big clients like The Who and Led Zeppelin and all sorts of very famous people, Gladys Knight and all sorts of famous people. And then I went and took my biggest client, who was a children's TV company called Lazy Town, and I became their global PR and marketing director. And then after that, I went through, I've had many different jobs, and yeah. And then when my kids moved out, I moved into tech, and then started doing other things. And then the over 50s thing with Advantages of Age has now led to another business that I run, which is around home sharing for older people. And I just started to see.
That's really interesting.
I started to notice some of the conversations that were going on, and I am by nature a problem solver. So when I see problems, I want to solve them.
We are gonna come back into the specific projects, as I want to talk about the various projects you've set up and the ones that you're thinking of setting up. I'm intrigued, I guess, at this point that both of you, in the broad brush terms, we're in the creative industries, and we're creative people. Is that significant? Is that, I would say it is, because my background is in the creative arts, in psychotherapy. I think of as an extension of the creative arts. And I'm very much committed to this idea that creativity is the core of any sort of happy life. But that's where I come from. I can back it up with evidence as well. I'm intrigued as to sort of your thoughts and experiences around that, particularly in the context of Advantages of Age. And
I mean, I feel like I have been given permission to be more creative as I get older, because I have got more confidence now in all of those things, like I'm writing poetry now, like I'm writing the books that I want to write, which is about walking. I'm writing books where I walk with people, so I invite people to walk. It's me kind of taking the rock and roll thing of, in former times when you did an interview with somebody like the Pogues, or you got like a weekend with them.
Yeah.
And so of course you wrote a great piece because you spent all this time with them, you knew them and you drank with them, you just it was so brilliant having that kind of access before the whole PR thing happened. So I'm kind of trying to do that with my walks. I invite people to walk with me. Billy Bragg, for instance, walked with me, and we went on a 5-hour walk from Hackney Wick to Beckton Sewage Works. Yes! It was just brilliant. We bantered, we argued, we discussed, and that's so my kind of thing. So what I'm saying is that I have moved into being more creative and doing exactly what I want to do as I've got older. And in Advantages of Age, I'm trying to encourage other people and supporting other people to do the same, really, so that we're all kind of flowing in that river.
Well, let's put to one side the commodification of some of the outcomes of creativity which exist. And so you have films and you have songs and you have various things that can be sort of turned into commodities and made money out of. But that isn't what creativity is. Creativity is that person or that group of people who are engaging in developing that product, and that's that process. For you, Suzanne, has creativity been important? Is it important? Is it similar to Rose in that you feel more creative now, or what's your sort of take on all of that stuff?
Yeah, well, I re-engaged. I'd been a jazz singer in my 20s and a session singer, and I re-engaged with my music and singing in my mid 50s. It's like, I don't know how many years now, 4, I guess, years ago. And now I'm preparing a show about a lyricist called Dorothy Fields, who was very successful during the early part of the 20th century. Well, actually up until the 1970s. And I, like Rose, I think that one of the great benefits of being an older woman, especially, is that we have been liberated from having to be the main caregiver, because our kids are now grown up and we no longer are perceived as maybe the sexual objects that we were when we were in our 20s. So we don't have to think about breeding and all that thing. And that gives you, that opens up lots of other opportunities to live your life in the way that you want. And maybe sometimes you put that on hold. And I know certainly for me, my singing was something that I thought I'd lost, like literally lost during the menopause. I couldn't work out where my voice was anymore. I felt really uncomfortable singing. And then I started taking lessons and started exploring like the very low range of my voice, which is like quite seriously low, shockingly low now. My singing teacher's like, it's so amazing. You can sing like Barry White. I'm like, is that amazing?
I've got to hear that. You're going to jump into some song for us. That was
no, but I honestly, I can't like, she just keeps making me go lower and lower and going, that's
I can hear it in your range in your voice as well.
Like that's a B under C, under lower C. I'm like, oh my God, it's so low. So yeah, that's been great. And I'm just so loving getting back to that and getting the kind of recognition and being really, like Rose said, feeling so relaxed about this change in my voice, the opportunities it gives me, the ability to now actually perform and do something that I just really enjoy. Yeah. I just love it, you know?
It's an interesting narrative because some things you were saying, which are the ways I encourage people to frame and think about change, is that there are opportunities. Has that always been the case here? Because the narrative around this stuff is that, the money pause means you lose the ability to, as opposed to, okay, you're not burdened with that expectation anymore, which is another way of thinking about it. And you'd have many different ways of thinking about it, as many ways as possible. Where does that capacity in you come from, do you think, as individuals, that capacity to sort of go, I'll choose the nice interpretation here rather than the one that makes me feel rubbish? Is that always been there?
Well, my mother is just like, my mother is my role model for that because in fact, she said on the phone the other day, like she just has to feel positive about everything. Like that's just the way she is. She doesn't really do negativity to the same extent that I do, which is like if somebody's being a bit negative, she literally is just, I don't really have time for that. I'm sorry.
I'm with her. I don't spend
I mean, honestly, she started becoming a jeweler at 70. She comes from a very artistic family, but was always the business kind of person. And I think she felt quite, just felt like she could never meet the expectation of her brother and sister, who were professional artists and professional creative people and very successful in that capacity. And so she didn't engage with her own creativity until much later in life. And I never thought she had much of a creative bone in her body, although she did sing when she was younger, which is another musical thread that runs through my family. But then she discovered this massive talent for jewelry. And now she's an amazing jeweler, amazing. So it's just, and she loves an
extraordinary role model.
Just like amazing.
Really. So, I love the way, I love the energy and love that you have for her. It's really powerful and strong, and it's very inspiring. Sorry, Rose, you're trying to come in.
I think we have to say so. Well, I think it's important to say that a lot of alternative spiritual stuff is, very positive, and there is a thing that's, the tyranny of positivity.
Yes.
And for me, Advantage of Age, although we do inspiring stories, people's stories, it's very much for me about embracing the shadow and embracing that and then going through it and coming out the other side. So it's not just like saying, forget this, forget that, just be positive at all. Really, it isn't. Even though we don't kind of like, we're not vulnerable every minute of the day on our page, but we definitely are not in that kind of,
I get that, but I guess there's also something around a growth mindset and a mindset which is the opposite of that. And I guess that's what I'm sort of struggling to talk about, is that, where does that come from? How do you experience that? Sort of, because I'm a great advocate of, I think in terms of emotional experience, I totally agree with you that we have a range of emotions, and actually, I think they're probably reducible to two sets: emotions that make us go towards something, emotions that make us go away from stuff. So it's go to and avoid tends to be where they are, but we are complex creatures and we have lots of different experiences and feelings, and I think that's valid. The toxic positivity, which I think you're talking about, Rose, is a pathological state, and if you come across somebody who's toxically positive, avoid them like the plague, because they're just going to really mess with your head, in my experience.
Yeah, really.
And they're messing with their own heads. But if we take that as given, that human experience is across a spectrum, and that the same event can be experienced in radically different ways with people, and all those experiences are valid and valuable. And in fact, that difference, that diversity, is what makes being human great. It's what makes life great, as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't want that bland approach. Nevertheless, I think there are some psychologically healthy ways of dealing with things, and some ways that aren't so healthy. And one of the psychologically healthy ways is what I would call in my profession a growth mindset, which it seems to me both of you are demonstrating. And Rose, when you say sometimes things are shit, but you don't avoid that, that's part of, I think, a growth mindset. Yeah, sometimes things are shit, to be honest. Really, really shit. And I remember talking to my sister. She died many years ago, and when I think about it, I still feel the sting of tears, because it was a sort of a very interesting and beautiful death. In that I changed some behaviour, and I went to see her to ask her forgiveness for having been an arsehole, really, for much of our lives. And she was happy to forgive me, and we started our relationship again. But she was dying of motor neurone disease at the time, and she had a couple of years left. And I did ask her, I said, well, Debbie, why aren't you depressed about the thought of dying? Because her kids were young. She was 40-something, and she had 3 kids, all under 18. And I said, aren't you depressed about the thought of dying? She said, no. I said, how did you manage that? She said, well, I don't think about it. I think about what I've got. And that, in no sense, I got no sense from her that she was sort of toxically positive and all of that. I'm sure she had her days when it was just shit and awful. But it isn't how she focused on it. What she focused on, what she had, and she worked with it, which was, I thought, I experienced as, profoundly inspirational, to be honest.
Definitely.
And there were definitely times when she thought it was awful. I know that. So she had emotions. So for yourselves and for you, maybe, Rose, to sort of thinking about, where does that capacity, do you think, come from? Is it something that you've learned over time?
I developed resilience through fighting with my father. So, I mean, literally, and, there is actually trauma around that as well. But later on, as I grew up, I literally spent a lot of time fighting verbally with him across the, like really talking about politics and things like that. And it gave me this, like a big resilience and a big kind of like independent, I'm going to do it my way, furry punk. I mean, when Style magazine said that, advantage of age of the punks of aging, for me, it really, really did resonate, because that DIY thing, it's just so me, and it's so us, really, the whole organization. Like, I cannot help but be that way.
Yeah. I also think it's probably the only sensible way to approach life, because my experience is this, that the corporate model is an ability to it's the attempt to ignore the way life actually is, and somehow control it and put some inappropriate boundaries around it that don't really exist and are actually fundamentally anti-human and anti-connection and anti-love and sort of and pretty much dead. And then they hire all these consultants to go, bring us back to life. Well, it's actually the way you've structured the whole thing is wrong. And I've been in corporate environments that do the opposite of that. And I remember I went into a corporate environment which was actually not something I ethically agree with. It was a gaming company, but they had a corporate environment that was very creative and open. And I recognised and felt at home, and I understood why they were successful immediately because of the way they did things. They were harnessing what I see as innate human issues around creativity, right brain, connection, love, tribe. All of those things, I think, are innate heritage. And that's why humans dominate the planet, because we can do that stuff. I want to come, because I'm just aware of time, but I want to come back now, if possible, to the actual things that you have been doing and are doing and will be doing, and the ways that people can sort of experience advantages of age. Can people come to the hot tub? Is that a real thing or not?
No.
Is that invitation only?
They can't at the moment, because I'm living in Las Palmas at the moment, but I won't be for long. I'll be back soon.
But you literally do have a mobile, or were you just teasing me about that?
It's not a mobile hot tub yet. No,
we don't have a mobile.
That was a dream we had.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm dashed. My hopes are dashed.
She did have another Arts Council grant, but both Rose and I couldn't face the application process for a mobile hot tub.
You see, the thing is,
it's so anti-human. It really
we really had a brilliant time when we had the Arts Council grant. We actually started up mini hot tub salons. So basically, you can only get 4 people really comfortably into that hot tub. Yeah. But what we used to do was have a theme, like outrageous fashion or style or death or tantra. And then we used to just invite a couple of people along, and then we used to do a Facebook Live with it. And that was some of my favorite days with that, because we just could totally be like this ourselves, but we were in a hot tub in our swinging costumes talking about tantra.
And it was so fab.
It was so brilliant. So I mean,
Rose, have you seen the hot tubs that are on the canals in Hackney?
Yeah.
They're hilarious. I mean, it's just the best idea. It's absolutely fantastic. So what other projects initially did you set up? What sort of events were happening? And give us the story of what you've actually done over the last 4 years, is it, did you say?
No, it's going to be 5 years.
6 years, okay.
Yeah.
So what was tell me, what were the series of events you did, and what are you currently doing? So take us back to the beginning of that.
Rose will tell you about the early days. The early days.
Well, I mean, really, the early days were quite a few club nights, for instance, vintage cabaret. I mean, we're all into dancing and cabaret and dressing up and the flamboyant forever bus, you know. I mean, we know we could redo these things. It's just that we're not very good at redoing things. You know, we understand that you could do it, but we like to create new things. So, we had a taboo night where we looked at sexuality. So me and Suzanne discussed, could we have a sex film that would be okay for us and our audience? And Suzanne managed to find something that was consensual with older people, looked great fun, and, you know, and the older woman was empowered in her choices of what she was doing. So that was great.
It's a serious issue in terms of finding pornography that is ethical, in terms of the people that are involved are safe and they earn a reasonable wage, and et cetera, and also the images and the way it's presented are not derogatory and undermining. So well done, Suzanne. That was interesting research.
I went to a Cine Kink festival in New York City, and I saw this film, and I approached the distributor and said, could we show it at our taboo night? And it's called My Boyfriends Are Poly, But I'm Not, something like that.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Very interesting.
I've still got it on a Google Drive, Rose, by the way.
Great. We'll have a reunion.
I sent it to Caroline.
Oh yeah, because this is the sort of thing that in the Facebook group, people ask questions like, so somebody who's a psychotherapist, asked the other day, does anybody know of any nice in inverted commas porn? And, you know, she explained that it was client looking for it, although there was lots of laughter at that bit. Yeah. But it was unbelievable how many people responded to this. There was just like lists of people saying this and that and the other,
including the producer of the Cine King Festival.
Ah, really? So
it was like, I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in years. And she was like,
oh, that's who that was. Oh, I noticed that. I noticed you two having a chat.
I mean, I think it's an interesting, the whole thing is there's an aspect of the conversation which is just breaking the taboo, which is, older people fuck and let's get over it, you know, and maybe do it in different ways to when they were 20, but whatever. But there's also another aspect, isn't there, about, you know, for me, there's an aspect which goes something like this. We can't prohibit porn. We might as well try and shape it into something that's better and healthier. As consumers, we can make choices to improve things without a doubt. And I sort of, as a clinician, I made a decision a long time ago about the use of social media, for example. It was obvious it's not going anywhere, and I wasn't just willing to sit on the sidelines and lob hand grenades at it and say it's bad, it's wrong. I wanted to go and engage with it and do something positive with it. And that's how I feel about these things. I mean, sort of similar vein, I guess, that we can engage positively with these things and accept the reality of it. And also, I happen to be, you know, on a personal level, an advocate of sex workers. I think we have appalling double standards around sex workers, and it really pisses me off, to be honest. I'm sort of, you know, we should stop doing all that nonsense, and particularly during the pandemic, it saved a lot of people's asses financially.
Yeah.
And actually, online porn is a lot safer than walking the streets, without a doubt. So, you know, it's been liberating, I think, for a lot of women involved in the sort of sex industry. So you were doing those types of things. What else have you done along this sort of journey? We'll bring you up to date about what you're going on. So you set up the Facebook page at that point alongside the website?
Yes. So I decided. Actually, after we set up the website, I then went on this crazy internet marketing course. And at the time I had a little bit of money, so I was able to do this. And I decided that I was going to basically give up all my work, and I was just going to spend it on the Facebook and set up a Facebook group and just sit on it for pretty much 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Which I did. And because the guy that ran the internet marketing group said, you just need to do nothing but set up a Facebook group. And because I was like, well, he's an expert. That's what he said. So I set this group up, and it grew very, very quickly, but it was incredibly time consuming to do that. And at the time,
what's the group called, so that we can just put a link out?
Called Advantages of Age, Baby Boomers and Beyond. It's just, if you type in Advantages of Age, as long as it's a group.
James will find the page, and he will put the link out so people can.
It's a group. It's a group as opposed to a page.
It's a group.
Yeah.
And is it a closed group? How do people join it if they want to?
It is a closed group now. We went through a period where we were a public group, and then because the conversations we had, some of them were of a sensitive nature, and people, and the decision was made as a group that we would become a private group. So we then became a private group.
And can people still join if they apply?
Yeah, people join all the time.
So now I moved across to startup school, and Rose really now is the linchpin in the group, and really, and one of the things I would say about the group, because the group is very much the kind of, I would say, the kind of beating heart of the organizations. It really is kind of like the pulse for me. It's one of the few places where I've seen conversations where people have radically opposing views.
Yeah.
And yet it never descends into a bun fight. It's always.
It rarely descends.
Rarely. Okay, can't say never. Rarely descends into a bun fight, and often it's it's actually really enlightening because, as you know, one of the challenges with Facebook, which honestly, some days I think if we could move off Facebook, that'd be lovely because it does have its challenges, is that, they only show you the stuff they think you're going to like, right? And so sometimes you can be really siloed with a group of people that just all agree with each other.
Yeah.
And honestly, that would be the most boring place in the world if everybody just went, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love that. Oh, love that. But in our group, we don't get people that say they love it. So in fact, today I posted something which was around the fact that the BBC are doing podcasts looking for people who either struggle with dementia or are caring for somebody with dementia.
Yeah.
And they use some language which something about dementia can be a life-enhancing experience or something, right? And people just said what the actual
it's never been my experience, to be honest.
Right. I mean, like there are times where you can use life-enhancing, but associating with dementia, we're not accepting that. Like, no,
that's that sort of toxic positivity bullshit.
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be called out, I think.
Exactly. And
at the same time as we were doing, book reviews by Wendy Mitchell, who has got dementia, and she is, going down a much more positive line, but she's talking about her experiences, and so, but different things, different people's experiences. But yes, our group are not afraid to call out anything that they don't think is quite right, which is great. It's lively.
It is.
It's humorous as well. It's humorous. There's lots of black humor going on.
Tell us, Rose, about some of the arts projects that through the Arts Council that you've set up and that have happened.
So the latest one that I did over the last year was a film called Dance Me to Death and a performance called Dance Me to Death, where I gathered a group of 10.
I'm laughing because I think it's brilliant stuff.
Over 60s, including myself. And remember, this was just because I wanted to dance. I wanted to dance. I spotted these two young choreographers that I thought, oh my God, they would be so great to work with. And so I thought, okay, let's get a group of over 60s. And we did do it very seriously, though, auditioning. And mind you, it was in the middle of COVID and we had to get everything together. It was really quite challenging. I had 1 or 2 telephone calls with Suzanne, which was like, help, what should I do? Really. But we did it. We managed to do it in the cemetery in June. I mean, the other thing was the weather. We had all sorts of weather challenges.
So let me just make this explicit for people. Yeah. I know the story. So Rose is assuming that people listening know the story. Let me make this clear. Rose got the Arts Council to fund her to get some choreographers together, to pull together a bunch of over 60s who are not professional dancers to put on a dance performance in a cemetery. Okay, she did that. Rose actually did that shit, right?
And I ran the work. I ran the workshop.
Just the most extraordinary thing that I've come across in it's absolute genius.
And
I loved it. I really loved it. I loved the dancers. I loved the choreographers. And I ran workshops on death and dying in the morning so that we got into a ritual space. Exactly. So everybody who was in it was open. We were really, really eclectic group, and people hadn't necessarily been in groups where you do sharing, but they did. Some people were Christians, Sufi, agnostic.
Exactly, right. That's right.
And we shared an immense amount of trust. And we were a great group. And then we filmed it as well. So we've got a short film now that I'm putting in for festivals. And the filming was also a nightmare because there was rain.
Are you hoping to get it distributed? I mean, is it available?
Well, I mean, first of all, festivals. And then I don't know what next. I mean, we'll probably
watch it, or will you?
It's a beautiful film. It is honestly, it's so beautiful. It's just fantastic.
I can imagine it is.
I am very proud of it. I have to say, and us.
Will it be public available at some point, Rose? Or?
Yes, it will be public after I've gone through a period of. I've put it in for 2 dance film festivals so far, and I'm looking for more. And then there's a process, they don't want it to be public.
Festival, so we can just advertise them for you now.
One is called Host, and the other is called Frame Rush.
So James, if you can find those and the links to them, and what's the film called?
Dance Me to Death.
Dance Me to Death. So James, that would be really cool. So people can sort of support that. You've got the ongoing, we've got the Entrepreneurs Academy, which is helping people like me, because I wish it had existed when I was made redundant and was depressed and didn't know what to do. It was been absolutely, I'd have embraced it with all my heart, to be honest. So tell us a bit about what you do there and how people can access it, Suzanne.
So Startup School for Seniors is a program. It's either over 2 or 8 weeks. We do an intensive version and a longer version. And it takes people who either have no idea whatsoever, but are thinking about doing something for themselves, to people who have an idea but don't know how to get it off the ground. And we help them to manifest that into a business. And by the end of the 8 weeks, roughly 35% of people that come on the course have made money,
which is superb, because without help, about 8% of startups work. And so to go from 8% to 35% is extraordinary. That's really high five.
Yeah, thank you.
That's really cool stuff. And so that's the current project. They've got the website people can access, the Facebook page. Any other current projects that you're working on or plans that you have that sort of will pop out at some point?
We have a few dreams.
Yeah, we have some dreams.
Tell us about your dreams.
Website. Yeah.
We want to do an award ceremony.
Oh, we do.
We want to do things like, old bad sex in films and things like that, the worst old sex scenes, and have a really fun but also inspirational award events. That's one of our dreams, definitely.
Great. Where will you do that? I was just at BAFTA the other night watching a screening. That seems like a nice place down at Piccadilly.
I'm thinking more like Wilton Hall or somewhere.
Oh, that would be great.
Wilton,
Wilton would be brilliant.
Yeah. The old music.
So any potential sponsors that are watching, can you just get in contact with us?
Yeah.
I'd like to do a book which is called Sex, Death and Rock and Roll, which is a kind of collection of personal stories, but also essays from our writers, really, that challenges all the things that we want to challenge, but also kind of deeply goes into those places, and people reveal things about themselves and how they are around sexuality, death.
Yeah. Wonderful. Now, so you provide all these services. How can people help you as an organization, as individuals, to support, enable the growth and the development? Is there somewhere people can drop money in, charitable donations?
We have a little membership scheme that we're currently reviewing, but still exists. It's not going to change price-wise. It'll just, the ethos around it might change a little bit, and it's just a membership to support what we do, because most of what we do is a lot of it is voluntary or very low paid, and it's £4.99 a month.
That's so expensive.
Yeah, you can be a premium member of Advantages of Age for £4.99.
Why 99? Who thought of that?
Oh, it's like one of those spammy numbers.
Another one of her marketing courses.
Is it? You went on a marketing course. Don't charge the whole £5 for God's sake.
Yeah, don't do it.
It's like one of those, supposed to be a suggestive number. £4.99, right?
Okay. And people
I know that you want to do it, Noel, don't you?
I'm going to buy at least 25 memberships. As soon as this show is over, out comes the credit card. And people can just do that on the website or something.
Yes, premium member page on the website. The website's getting a revamp, and the focus is really going to be on the writing, because the writing is superb and it doesn't get enough visibility. And so the new website's going to be really focused on the authors and the writing. And I'm working on that one.
All right, cool. Yeah. We are out of time, unfortunately, you two. Yeah. But don't go away. I'm going to sort of wrap the show up. There'll be various links associated with this so that people can get involved. Also, if anybody's listening can help, think about that. Think about how you might be able to practically help. They're looking for sponsors for the awards ceremony. I'm sure you can sort out donating money to events. Anybody out there who has information or support around film and dance festivals so that we can give this film a really good platform, that would be great as well. So all of those things are possible. I'm sure if you go on the website, there'll be contact details so you can get hold of Suzanne and Rose if you've got great ideas to help them out. We
need an events organizer.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and there'll be plenty of them around. So
exactly.
You heard it here first, folks. If you two stay there, I'm just going to wrap the shop and say goodbye to people, but you have to do that frozen pose thing that James told you.
Okay.
So nice smiles and like that. Okay, just stop doing that. That's horrible. Yeah, that's it. It's old fogies. Oh, great. It's been a tremendous fun show for me. I hope people have enjoyed it as well. And it's a really, I think, a fantastic example of how to stay creative and essentially alive in your heart sort of throughout your life. Very inspiring evening for me, very sort of happy. And we didn't once talk about the fact that I have to keep going to the toilet loads of times, which is something that's happened to me in older age. And so I'm glad that was never mentioned until right at the end. I'm going to say goodbye for now. You two stay here. I'll see you all next week with the next episode of whatever this show is called. I've forgotten. I don't actually know anymore, but I'm going to say goodbye for now and see you all.